Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates. Great opportunity for young people, for particularly high school aged young adults who are, well, I don't know. Do we call them adults yet? We'll find out in just a moment. We're going to talk with our friends at Concordia University Irvine about a great event there called Crosswise. Joining us today, Dr. Daniel Dean. He's professor of philosophy and program director for Crosswise at Concordia University Irvine. Dr. Dean, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Andy. Good to be here.
And also joining us today, Dr. Joel Esch. He's professor of theology and director of graduate programs in theology at Christ College, Concordia University Irvine, and executive director of Crosswise. Dr. Esch, thanks for joining me.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So who wants to share with us how Crosswise began? Is that you, Dr. Esch?
Yeah, that's me for sure. We got word from the Lilly Endowment that they were interested in starting a series of youth initiatives, which basically got together high school students with theological traditions around the country and put them in contact with or in discussion with cultural issues of the day. And so they had a whole bunch of money. If you know the Lilly Endowment at all, the amount of money they work with is astounding. And they sent it out to a variety of universities across the country. And we happened to get one of these letters saying, hey, would you consider starting a youth theological institute of this sort? Well, I was the one who unfortunately spoke too much in favor of this in a little kind of information gathering. And then next thing you know, I was saying yes to writing a grant. And sure enough, we won this grant. And at that point, kind of wrapped in a bunch of folks from our university to help get this thing off the ground. And so the way we kind of thought about it was, it's really important that we have a Lutheran approach to this. It's really important that we make this energized and exciting and interesting, that we had so many resources at our disposal, so many professors that were interested in liberal arts, so many professors interested in not just STEM fields, but how to connect those STEM fields with faith issues. We felt like we were a good fit. And this happened, Dan, what do you say? This is about 6 years ago?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so some time ago it was an original 4 or 5 year grant. Then recently we won the follow-up grant. So we look like we're going to be going for a solid 10 years at the minimum.
Right.
Wow. Well, that's great to hear about just the interdisciplinary approach to this as well. Dr. Dean, from your perspective, why is dialogue on these contemporary issues important for young people today?
Well, this what Crosswise allows us to do is kind of engage the culture from a faith-based university perspective. And I think I'm thinking as a parent here, one of those fearful endeavors is sending my child to college, right? Mm-hmm. And Joel and I both conceive of this kind of task of just trying to. Youth groups do a good job of kind of getting the students into the biblical mindset, the catechetical mindset, but rarely do we get at that kind of high school level an introduction to kind of collegiate thought, or what I like to call kind of the liberal arts. I mean, it's not, that's what it is. And so we thought that what we could do well here at Irvine is introduce high schoolers, whether they're going to come to our university or whether they're going to go to another university, into the actual kind of intellectual tradition of Christianity that deals with faith and culture, faith and science, faith and issues that are in the world around us, at that kind of faith-based intellect, kind of an Augustinian faith-seeking understanding, so that hopefully these students, when they go off to college, they won't be going blindly into the classroom where, they're going to rub into ideas that are just that aren't foreign to them. All right. We're trying to give them, and dialogue is so in a way, this is kind of we're trying to give our students the tools they need to enter college boldly and courageously, and not, turn off what they're learning from the university, but actually engage with it. And I think if the dialogue is important, because if these youth are the future of our church, I've seen it too much where we send a kid. I've seen it in my own family. We send people off to college, and they come out non-Lutheran. They might not come out non-Christian, but I want to keep them within our fold. I think we got the best theology out there, and I'm just tired of losing kids.
Well, I mean, it can be worse than that, though, Dan, and we've seen this as well, which is like you send your kids off, and they encounter their first philosophy class. Okay, no offense to philosophy, my good friend over there, but they encounter their first philosophy class, and this is the first time they've ever heard someone try to rip apart the Christian, kind of understanding of how the world works, and they're left with no armor. They've never been exposed to that, and so it's like sending someone in who's not inoculated. It doesn't mean that they have to go in guns a-blazing, like they have to defend every
Right.
line of scripture in the midst of that, but they don't have any defense. And so part of the idea of Crosswise was to make sure that these kids understood that there are opposing worldviews out there, and they're significant. And sometimes they're not easy to uncover or expose, but to go ahead and be confident to have a conversation with those worldviews, knowing that first things are first, that
Right.
Jesus Christ still stands at the center of reality, that he died and rose again. And with that, I have the ability to engage this broad, grand world that God's created for me and do it with a sort of confidence that allows me to say, yes, there's some bit of value here and there, but it's also a way for me to test my own thinking on matters that doesn't push faith off to the side, but keeps it in the forefront.
Right. I think Colossians really captures this well when we talk about, I'm always leery of beware of the vain philosophies, again, my own discipline. But later on, walk with wisdom towards the outsider, with your speech being seasoned as salt, right? And that's really the value of the dialogue, so that we're allowing these kids to realize that, hey, you can go into an evolutionary biology class and you don't have to be fearful or reject everything that you're learning in that class because
or belligerent, for that matter.
Or belligerent, yeah. You can actually be some salt into that conversation in a way that's beneficial to the church.
In what practical ways then do you equip students with these skills, with this experience at Crosswise?
Well, there's a good way that we started right from the get-go. We decided that we were going to start each Crosswise with something that would create a little disequilibrium. And so we've had our main speakers from time to time be atheists. And we would say, hey, you're going to hear things that you're not going to agree with, and we don't even agree with, but we have to find a way in which we hear and listen and converse with this person to get a better understanding of where their position lies, and there we can clarify as we go forward, thinking about our assumptions, their assumptions, and which way we can move forward as Christians into the world. So, for example, Zoltan Istvan is our lead speaker for this coming one in June. He was also our lead speaker 5 or 6 years ago, the very first initial Crosswise. Well, how do we engage in conversation? Well, we have the kids scribbling notes while he is giving his presentation, and immediately following, we open it up for questions and responses. And I got to tell you, half the hands in the room went up saying, well, you said this, but I want to know how that makes sense in light of this. Or is that an assumption you're making? And we have them practice in live format this interaction, this conversation that we're trying to cultivate in order that we might all be better critical thinkers. And it's a safe place to do that.
Right. Yeah, we set the stage that this is, the way I always like to talk about it is, this is the liberal arts meets Sunday youth group. And we treat the students as adults, and we expect kind of adult behavior out of them. And Joel and I were surprised. Maybe surprised is not the right word, but we're pleasantly surprised, I'll say, that every year the students, they bring it, they crave it, they want to hear. And so you put this person up in front of them that is just 180% the opposite direction of anything they've ever engaged with. And you let them engage with it in person, in community, in the flesh. And they do a lot of the work. And so we've got students, we know there's more out there, there's more youth out there that crave this sort of experience.
I think partly because they know there's more than their Christian world out there. At the end of the day, they know that there's something beyond their church and their families, which are proper havens, places of safety that they can begin the building blocks of how to think well, how to think scripturally. But they also know these kids are wise. They see what's going on. They need to know how to engage a world that doesn't see Jesus as Lord. And so they're looking for these opportunities to test themselves in those specific circumstances that we cultivate at Crosswise.
So what's the schedule? What's the lineup for this year's Crosswise?
Yeah, so, and Dan might be able to speak to this better. He's the one who really constructs just awesome schedules and awesome speakers and awesome opportunities. But I'll just give a little brief
go for it.
intro into the theme, which is called Techno-Human. Who do you say that I am? So we are really going to be looking forward-looking once again to see what our society has created around us, this vision of what humans are to be through the lens of a technological society that keeps on telling them, hey, you're perfectly fine if you're in an online ethereal environment. You're perfectly you when you are in an online social network or a virtual reality scenario. And we're trying to figure out what that means. Is that true? Is there something unique about human beings that might reject such a vision of humanity? So maybe, Dan, you could speak to the program a little.
Right. So we've got, due to the fact this is the first one, we're coming off COVID, it's a shortened kind of weekend experience now is what we're playing with instead of our week-long camp that we used to do, that we've done in the past. But we're going to keep the same kind of thread where we're going to hit. Zoltan comes in on Friday night. He's going to give them he's basically a transhumanist apologist. The guy's got chips in his hands to open doors and things like that. I mean, he's a true believer, where I'm pretty sure if you were to ask him, he does not think he's going to die. Because he will be uploaded into the cloud or something like that. And so he's going to come in and just give the students the narrative of the transhumanist position. And then we've got three professors, myself, Joel, and Dr. Rod Soper, who's in our biology department. We're going to kind of unpack with the students kind of what philosophy is, what theology is, what science is, and how does these disciplines as disciplines engage with the thought of, say, the transhumanist, and then have some kind of back and forth in terms of struggling with, well, where does, say, philosophical wisdom, scientific wisdom, and theological wisdom, where do these overlap? Where's their tension? How do we make sense of this transhumanist agenda from these different disciplines? With the back end of the weekend, kind of a Sunday morning, we're going to bring some reconciliation to it and say, now, how do we move forward with this kind of technological world that we live in as a Christian who's going to college and might become a biologist, a philosopher, a theologian, a business person, a nurse? We'll take it into that kind of vocational realm as we conclude up the weekend.
I want to come, but we have just about a minute left. Who can apply, and tell us the application details?
Sure. First, everything is online. So cui.edu/crosswise, CROSSWISE. And so at cui.edu/crosswise, you'll find all the information about registration. It is for current high school students. So if you're in high school right now, freshman to senior, you are welcome to attend. It's $199 for the registration for the weekend. That includes everything from activities to speakers to food to all the way down. We'll pick you up from the airport, even if you're coming across the country. And we've done that many times. We've had as many as 12 states represented in one particular Crosswise. And so we take you from essentially Friday, June 18th, around noon, all the way to Sunday the 20th at about noon. And it's a great experience. Great experience. There's always some alumni there and always new students.
Outstanding. It just sounds like a great event. I know the last time we talked about it, I was kind of jealous of the kids that got to go, and same is true again this year. Our guest today, Dr. Daniel Dean, Professor of Philosophy and Program Director for Crosswise at Concordia University Irvine. Dr. Dean, thanks so much for being my guest.
Thank you.
Dr. Joel Esch, Professor of Theology and Director of the Graduate Programs in Theology at Christ College, Concordia University, Irvine, and Executive Director of Crosswise. Dr. Esch, thanks so much for your time today.
Always a pleasure.
You've been listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.